My name is Rowan Hale, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a carpenter in a small town tucked between the hills and the sea. Most people here know me as the man with the kind hands. I never chased money or fame. I just liked making things that lasted, tables that families could gather around, toys that children could pass down. Life had been simple, almost too quiet, until Celine walked into my workshop one cloudy afternoon. She had rain in her hair and a chipped frame in her arms. "Can you fix this?" she asked, her voice soft but careful, as if every word might break. I remember smiling and saying, "If what can splinter, it can heal." She laughed, a small sound, but stayed with me. From that day, Celine came often, sometimes with broken things, sometimes just with stories. She told me she'd left a toxic relationship, that her ex had controlled her every move. She said she wanted a fresh start. The sadness in her eyes felt real. I could almost see the scars beneath her calm. I told myself that if kindness had weight, maybe mine could help her rebuild. Weeks turned into months. She'd sit on the stool by the window, watching me carve. She said the smell of pine made her feel safe. Once, when a splinter lodged deep in my finger, she rushed over, held my hand, and whispered, "You're too gentle for this world." I didn't realize then how that gentleness would be tested. When I proposed 6 months later, under the giant fig tree by the market square, she cried so hard I thought she might faint. Everyone clapped. Even old Mrs. Benton from the bakery wiped her eyes. I believed I'd finally found peace, someone who saw me not as just a carpenter, but as a man worthy of love. But peace, I would learn, can hide storms beneath it. The first crack came one day when her phone buzzed during one of her visits. She turned it face down quickly, saying it was just a friend. The second came when she canceled dinner with my friend Sylvia, saying she wasn't feeling well, but later I saw a lipstick mark on the rim of a coffee cup in her car from a cafe she swore she hadn't visited that day. I told myself love meant trust, and trust meant not asking too many questions. Yet something cold began to live inside me. A small seed of doubt I couldn't carve away. That was before the day I delivered a cabinet to the villa on the hill and saw the pendant. The villa sat beyond the orchards, where the road turned from gravel to quiet stone. I had built a mahogany cabinet for a client I barely knew, a wealthy man named Mr. Varon. His assistant had ordered it, saying it was a surprise gift for someone special. When I arrived, the housekeeper led me upstairs to place it inside a sun-filled dressing room. That's when I saw it. On the table beside a mirror lay a silver pendant shaped like a teardrop, with a small carving at the back. My carving. I had made it for Celine on her birthday, engraving the letter C intertwined with a vine. My hands froze midair. Next to it stood a framed photograph of a man with sharp eyes and an easy smile. I knew that face. It was the same one Celine had shown me once, the toxic ex she said she escaped from. My stomach twisted. How could her pendant be here? Had she been here? Was she lying about everything? The housekeeper noticed me staring. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "It belongs to the lady who visits often. The master says she brings light to this house." I nodded faintly, heart pounding. "Does she come here often?" "Oh yes, almost every week." I carried the tools back to my truck in silence. The air outside smelled of oranges and rain, but it only made the knot in my chest tighten. By the time I reached my workshop, the sun had dipped low, and Sylvia was waiting by the door. She handed me a paper bag of meat pies and squinted at my face. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I might have," I muttered, telling her about the pendant and the photo. Sylvia's expression hardened. "I told you something was off. She's too smooth, too rehearsed. People who hide pain don't tell the same story twice." I wanted to defend Celine, but my throat felt dry. "Maybe there's an explanation," I said. "Maybe she sold the pendant. Or maybe she lied." Sylvia cut in gently. "Be careful, Rowan. Trust is a gift, not a weapon." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt louder. The ticking clock, the creak of wood, the soft wind pressing against the shutters. Around midnight, I opened a small chest where I kept Celine's old letters. The last one read, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." Belief had built my world. Doubt was now tearing it apart. By morning, I decided to confront her. But when I reached her apartment, the door was unlocked, and the rooms were empty. The curtains fluttered in the wind, and the faint scent of Celine's perfume lingered, lavender and smoke. Her clothes were gone, her favorite mug missing. Even a little sketch of us she kept on the dresser had vanished. On the table lay a folded note addressed to me. Please don't look for me. You'll understand soon. No explanation, no signature beyond the soft loop of her C. My knees felt weak. I sat on the floor, staring at the note until the words blurred. Sylvia came when I called. She read it twice, jaw tight. This isn't a goodbye, she said. It's a door half closed. She's hiding something big. We searched for days. I called her friends, her workplace, even hospitals. No one had seen her. Then, 3 nights later, an envelope slid under my workshop door. No return address. Inside was an invitation printed on thick ivory paper. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Celine Marrow and Adrian Varon. The date was 1 week away. The venue, Rosegate Villa, the same place where I had delivered the cabinet. My vision blurred with disbelief. The pendant, the photo, the weekly visits, it all fit together now, but in a way that didn't make sense. If Adrian was the man she called toxic, why would she marry him again? And why invite me? Sylvia gripped my shoulder. Rowan, this could be a setup. Don't go. I have to, I said quietly. If there's truth, I need to see it with my own eyes. That night, I lay awake watching the shadows crawl across the ceiling. Love and betrayal kept switching faces in my mind. I remembered the way Celine used to watch me carve, so full of warmth, and wondered which version of her was real. By dawn, I had made up my mind. I would go to the wedding. I would find out what Celine was hiding, even if it shattered everything I believed about love, trust, and myself. Outside, the morning sun painted the world gold, but to me, everything looked like splintered wood. For the next 2 days, I moved like a man split in half. One part of me still loved Celine. The other wanted to tear away the veil she had wrapped around us. I needed proof, something solid. The invitation listed Rosegate Villa, the same gated estate where I'd seen the pendant. I decided to go there before the wedding day, just to look, to breathe the same air she might still be breathing. I told Sylvia I was making a delivery. At least let me come with you, she said, eyes narrowed. No, I replied. If this turns ugly, I don't want you dragged in. She frowned, but handed me her small camera. Then record everything. Evidence speaks louder than heartbreak. The road curved through vineyards and olive trees before opening to the wide iron gates of Rosegate. I parked a short distance away and walked the rest, pretending to inspect the fence. Through the bars, I saw workers setting up white tents and strings of lights. It looked like a dream being built for someone else's happiness, my own nightmare in slow motion. A guard passed by. I ducked behind a hedge and waited until he disappeared. Then I slipped through a side gap I noticed weeks ago. The garden smelled of roses and wet earth. I crouched behind a fountain and watched as guests rehearsed. And then I saw her. Celine. She wore a simple ivory dress, her hair pinned up. She looked calm, almost radiant. Standing beside her was Adrian Varon, the man from the photo, the toxic ex. They were smiling, whispering, touching hands. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. Every memory we'd shared flashed before me like hammer blows. The night she said she'd never feel safe around him again. The tears, the promises. I stepped back too quickly, hitting a metal rake. The sound echoed. Celine's head snapped up. Her eyes swept the garden. For a heartbeat, our gazes met across the hedge. Shock flickered across her face, then fear. She said something to Adrian and hurried toward the path. I ran. By the time I reached my truck, my hand was shaking. I started the engine, but before driving off, I noticed something wedged beneath the wiper, a folded note. You shouldn't have come. Please trust me. It's not what it looks like. My breath caught. She had seen me, and instead of anger, she'd left another riddle. I drove until the road ended at the cliffs overlooking the bay. The sea crashed far below, spraying mist onto the rocks. I gripped the steering wheel, fighting the urge to scream. Not what it looks like. How could there be any other explanation? She was rehearsing her own wedding with a man she said ruined her life. When I returned home, Sylvia was waiting. "So?" she asked. I handed her the note. She read it twice. "She's playing you. Or she's protecting me." "From what, Rowan?" "A cake tasting." I sat down heavily. When she saw me, she looked scared. Not guilty scared. Sylvia sighed. "Fear can wear many masks. Maybe she's afraid you'll expose her lies." That night, sleep wouldn't come. I replayed every detail, the pendant, the secret text, the missing clothes. But one memory kept standing out. A small locked wooden box Celine always kept in her wardrobe. She once told me it contained letters she couldn't burn yet. I had respected her privacy then. Now, privacy felt like poison. At dawn, I drove back to her empty apartment. The landlord, who liked me, let me in. Dust had already begun to settle. I found a box on the top shelf. The key was gone, but the wood was thin. I used a small chisel and pried it open. Inside were photos. Celine with Adrian, both younger, smiling beside a tall man in a suit. On the back of one photo was written, "Project Luma, Varen Foundation." Beneath the photos lay a card embossed with a gold crest. Varen Charitable Trust, Global Director, Harlan Varen. I frowned. I'd heard that name before. The Varens were a family of philanthropists who funded hospitals and schools. But beneath every charity, people whispered there were darker deals. Land grabs, money laundering, silencing of whistleblowers. At the bottom of the box was a sealed envelope marked for Rowan, if anything happens. My hands trembled as I tore it open. "Rowan, if you're reading this, then I couldn't tell you the truth in time. I left because I had to finish something I started long before I met you. Adrian wasn't my enemy. He was my partner. We're trying to expose someone powerful who ruined hundreds of lives through fake charities. Your honesty gave me hope again. Please believe me. I never lied about loving you." See, the paper slipped from my fingers. Outside, the morning light hit the window like glass. I realized then that my fiancé's secret wasn't betrayal. It was war. I read the letter 3 more times, each word sinking deeper. Celine hadn't vanished out of guilt. She'd gone undercover. But if her plan was so dangerous, she couldn't tell me. What kind of man were they trying to expose? I went to Sylvia's shop, the small bookstall near the bus terminal. She listened quietly as I told her everything. When I showed her the photos, she whistled low. "The Varen Trust," she said. "That's a nest of snakes. My cousin worked at their clinic. Said they shipped medicine that never reached patients. So Adrian and Celine are gathering proof," I said. "Or getting themselves killed," Sylvia muttered. "You can't just march in and ask questions." But I had to try. The letter mentioned Project Luma. I searched the public records of the town library. It was listed as a light initiative to bring solar power to remote schools. But the financial reports were blank, the contact address leading back to Rosegate Villa. By evening, I drove there again, this time under heavy rain. I parked behind the orchards and crept toward the rear of the estate. A service door was half open. Inside, the halls were dim, the marble floors reflecting candlelight. I heard voices, Celine's among them. "The files are in the safe," she was saying. A man replied, "Harlan's arriving tomorrow. Once he signs, we release the footage." Then another voice, a guard. "Someone's here." I ducked behind a curtain. Footsteps thundered down the hall. My pulse pounded in my ears. When the sound faded, I slipped toward the doorway from where I'd heard them speak. Papers littered the table. Blueprints, photos, a flash drive labeled Luma Proof. I pocketed it without thinking and backed away. On my way out, I caught sight of Celine through a cracked door. She was pacing, whispering into a headset. Her face was pale but fierce, so unlike the woman who once cried over a splinter in my hand. She wasn't lying then. She was fighting something far bigger than us both. Rain drenched me as I reached my truck. I drove off, heart racing, clutching the flash drive like it was a lifeline. Whatever was on it, people had risked everything to hide, and Celine was standing right in the storm center. I whispered into the dark cab, "Hold on, Celine. I'm not letting you fight alone." I sat at my workbench long after midnight, the rain still hammering against the windows. The flash drive lay in front of me like a loaded weapon. Every instinct told me to destroy it. Every beat of my heart told me it held the key to Celine's truth. I wiped my hands, slipped it into my old laptop, and waited for the screen to light up. A folder popped open, only one. Inside were dozens of short video clips and spreadsheets full of numbers. I clicked the first clip. The image shook as if someone had filmed in secret. A man in a white coat loaded boxes marked medical relief, Varon Foundation, onto a truck. The next frame showed the boxes dumped behind a warehouse, the contents replaced by cheap paperweights. Another clip showed children in a remote village waiting under the sun while an announcer promised solar panels that never arrived. My stomach churned. Project Luma was a lie. Millions stolen under the name of charity. The last clip froze me. It was Celine and Adrian standing in a dim office. Adrian whispered, "Once we leak this, Harlan Varon's empire collapses." Celine looked straight at the camera and said, "If anything happens to us, give this to the press." Then the video cut. I leaned back, dizzy. The drive wasn't just proof, it was a target on their backs. And now on mine. Before I could think, headlights flashed outside. A vehicle stopped near my workshop. I quickly ejected the drive and slipped it into the false bottom of a toolbox. Moments later, the door creaked open. "Rowan," a voice called. Sylvia stepped in, drenched. Relief swept through me, until I noticed the dark SUV idling behind her. "What's that?" I asked, nodding toward it. "Someone gave me a ride," she said too quickly. "You've been avoiding me, so I came." Her tone felt wrong. Sylvia never came without calling first. "You didn't tell anyone where I live, did you?" She hesitated. They already knew. My stomach dropped. Two men stepped through the door, both in suits soaked by the rain. The taller one spoke smoothly. "Mr. Hale, we're investigators for the Varon Trust. We understand you're in possession of stolen property." I glanced at Sylvia. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Betrayal slid through me like a blade. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Let's not make this unpleasant," the man replied. "Return what doesn't belong to you, and we'll forget tonight happened." I could feel the weight of the flash drive hidden under the bench. If they found it, Celine's work would vanish. I forced a calm breath. "I build furniture, not scandals. Check whatever you like." They searched the benches, pulled drawers open, kicked aside sawdust. I kept my face blank, praying they wouldn't notice the toolbox with a false bottom. Sylvia stood by the door, arms folded, eyes full of guilt. When one man turned to her and said, "Outside," she obeyed. The other followed, muttering into a radio. For a few seconds, I was alone. I grabbed the toolbox, slipped through the back exit, and ran into the rain. The mud sucked at my boots as I cut through the field toward the river path. Behind me, shouts rose, "He's running," and the beam of a flashlight swept across the darkness. I ducked behind a fallen tree until the voices faded, then headed toward town, my breath sharp and ragged. By dawn, I reached the small church at the edge of the harbor. Father Jonas, who often bought toys for the orphanage, was lighting candles. He looked startled to see me dripping on the stone floor. "Rowan, what?" "I need to keep something safe," I said. "Somewhere no one will find it." He led me to the sacristy. "The old donation box hasn't been used in years," he murmured. "Hide it there, if it eases your soul." I wrapped the drive in cloth and slid it under the false bottom of the box. My pulse slowed for the first time all night. "If anyone asks," I told him, "you never saw me." He nodded gravely. "Whatever storm you're in, son, may truth be your shelter." When I stepped back into the gray morning, the rain had stopped, but puddles glistened like mirrors. Sylvia's betrayal gnawed at me, yet part of me pitied her. Maybe they had threatened her. Maybe fear had louder teeth than loyalty. As I walked home, a message buzzed on my phone, an unknown number. "Rowan, they're onto you. Don't go back to the workshop. Meet me where we first met. Please trust me." It was signed with a single letter, C. My heart lurched. Celine was alive. But where we first met meant my workshop, the very place crawling with vermin. Was it really her texting or a trap? I stared at the screen until the wind dried the last drops of rain on my jacket. Whatever waited there, I would face it. Because love, once doubted, can still be brave. By the time I reached the edge of town, dawn had turned gold and pale across the rooftops. I hadn't slept, but exhaustion couldn't slow me. The message burned in my pocket, each word from Celine, or whoever sent it, pulling me toward danger like a tide I couldn't resist. My workshop stood at the end of Alder Lane, half hidden behind tall grass and the thin fog still curling off the fields. From a distance, everything looked quiet. Too quiet. I crouched behind an old fence, scanning the yard. The SUV from last night was gone, but muddy tire marks still scored the gravel. The front door hung slightly open. Every instinct screamed that it was a trap. Still, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I crept around the back, slipped through the side window I'd built to swing open for ventilation, and landed softly on the sawdust-covered floor. The smell of rain and varnish filled the air. Nothing had been touched since the search, except one thing. On my bench, someone had placed a small folded paper, weighed down by a chisel. I unfolded it. 3 words in Celine's handwriting: "Follow the blue light." At first, I thought it was a riddle. Then I noticed something faint on the far wall. A blinking blue LED. It came from one of my motion cameras, the kind I use to record custom builds for clients. The SD card inside glowed faintly, meaning it had recorded recently. I ejected it and plugged it into my laptop. The video began with Sylvia sneaking into the workshop hours earlier. Her face looked pale, desperate. She turned toward the camera as if she knew it was there. "Rowan," she whispered, "if you see this before they erase it, listen to me." They forced me to help them. Varen's men threatened to frame me for fraud. I gave them your address, but I didn't know they'd come tonight. Celine's alive, and she's trying to finish what she started. She said to tell you to find a place called Arden's Rest. It's not what you think. The clip ended abruptly when a flashlight beam flashed across her face, and she turned toward the door in fear. My heart pounded. Sylvia hadn't betrayed me by choice. She was trying to protect me. Relief mixed with guilt until my hands trembled. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, only to freeze when I heard movement outside. "Rowan," a voice whispered. Not Celine's. Sylvia stepped out from behind the rain barrel, her jacket torn and her eyes wild. "You saw it, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "How did you get away?" "They think I'm still in the van," she said breathlessly. I jumped out near the old bridge. "They'll come back soon. Tell me about Arden's Rest." She shook her head. "It's not a place most people know. It's an old botanical conservatory near the hills, abandoned after the Varen project collapsed. That's where Celine's been hiding, I think. She said it's where the truth lives." "Then I have to go." Sylvia grabbed my sleeve. "You don't understand. There's more. Celine told me Varen's foundation has spies inside law enforcement. If you go there, go alone. Trust no one. Not even me." Her voice broke, and for a second, she looked like the friend I used to share coffee and laughter with before all this madness began. I squeezed her hand once, then released it. "You did enough. Stay safe." I left her in the mist and drove north toward the hills. The sun rose higher, turning the wet road into a mirror of gold. Every mile pulled me closer to answers, and maybe to Celine. By the time I reached the outskirts of Arden's Rest, the air had grown heavy and sweet with the scent of damp earth and forgotten flowers. The conservatory loomed like a glass skeleton among ivy and thorns. Its panels were cracked, the sign half fallen. I parked a distance away, killed the engine, and approached on foot. Inside, light filtered through shattered glass and soft rays. Vines hung like curtains. I stepped over broken tiles, heart hammering. Then I heard it. Soft music, the same melody Celine used to hum while painting Clair de Lune. It echoed faintly from deeper inside. I followed the sound to a small corner room. On a dusty table sat a solar-powered speaker, still playing. Next to it lay a bouquet of pressed wildflowers tied with string and a note in Celine's handwriting. "If you've come this far, you still believe in me. Look beneath the fountain." The fountain stood in the center of the conservatory, dry and cracked. I knelt beside it, brushed away leaves, and found a hollow stone. Inside was a sealed envelope and a key. The envelope read, "For Rowan Hale. Only when the night feels heavier than truth." Before I could open it, footsteps echoed behind me. My pulse stopped. A shadow moved through the vines. "Rowan," came a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. It was her, Celine, pale, trembling, alive. We stared at each other across the ruined glass. the air thick with things unsaid. "I told you not to look for me," she whispered. "But you always had the kind of heart that couldn't stop." I took a step forward. "Then tell me the truth now. All of it." Her eyes glistened. "If I do," she said softly, "you'll never see the world the same again." For a long moment, we just stood there, Celine and I, two silhouettes framed by light seeping through broken glass. The vines swayed above us, whispering in the wind like the voices of people long gone. I wanted to rush to her, to pull her close, to ask every question clawing inside me. But something in her eyes, fear mixed with a quiet resolve, kept me still. She looked fragile, thinner than I remembered, her hair pulled into a messy braid. When she finally stepped forward, her voice trembled. "You weren't supposed to find me this way, Rowan." I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. "You left without a word. I've been chasing shadows for weeks. Tell me what's going on." Celine exhaled, the sound shattering the fragile stillness between us. "Do you remember the first day we met? You were fixing the rail outside the community center. You gave away your lunch to that boy feeding stray dogs." "Of course," I said, puzzled. "You told me that's when you realized I wasn't like him. Your ex." Her lips curved into a sad smile. "I wasn't lying about that part. But what I didn't tell you is why I was there. I was meeting someone connected to Varen's foundation. I was working undercover." The word undercover hit me like a hammer. I took a step back. "Undercover for who?" "For those who lost everything because of him," she said. "Families destroyed, small businesses erased. Varen built his empire by stealing identities and laundering donations through shell charities. I joined his organization 3 years ago, pretending to be his assistant. That's how I met him and how I became trapped." I stared at her. "You mean you and Varen?" She nodded. "It was part of the cover. When I realized what he was doing, I tried to expose him, but he found out first. He locked me into a legal contract, made me appear complicit. I couldn't leave without proof." "And a second wedding?" I asked quietly. Her gaze met mine. "It's not a wedding, Rowan. It's a sting. A public event disguised as a vow renewal ceremony where Varen plans to sign over his assets to a fake charity front. My job was to gather the evidence, swap the documents, and have it broadcast live through his own security feed. But then you came into my life, and I fell in love when I wasn't supposed to." My heart thudded in my chest. The pieces began to rearrange. The late-night calls, the hidden flash drive, the mysterious donations. "So you lied to protect me." "I lied to keep you safe," she whispered. "The moment Varen's men saw us together, I knew they'd start digging into your life." Something in her tone made my blood run cold. "What did they find?" She hesitated. "Rowan, do you remember the factory fire that destroyed your father's workshop 15 years ago?" My breath caught. "Yes." "The insurance never came through. My family never recovered." "That wasn't an accident," she said. "Varen's company owned that building. They torched several sites to claim fake insurance payouts. Your father's name was on one of the forged contracts." The room tilted around me. My hands clenched into fists before I even realized it. "You're telling me the man who ruined my family's life is the same one you're pretending to marry?" Celine's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, and he still doesn't know who you are. That's why I had to vanish. If he connects the dots, he'll use you to control me." I turned away, gripping the cracked fountain edge. The sound of my own pulse roared in my ears. For years, I told myself tragedy had no face, no target. Now it did. Celine came closer, her hand brushing mine. "I know you have every reason to hate me, but I need your help. Varen's holding a private rehearsal tonight at the old Birchwood Hall. If I don't show, he'll cancel everything and burn the evidence. If I do show, I need someone outside to trigger the data leak." "You mean the flash drive?" I murmured. "The one hidden in my cabinet." She nodded. "It's a backdoor into his security system. You're the only person who can get close without being flagged." The conservatory fell silent except for the drip of water from a cracked pipe. I wanted to trust her. I still loved her, but the world she described sounded like something out of a nightmare. Before I could answer, the sound of engines rumbled outside. Tires crushed gravel. Headlights sliced through the glass walls like blades. Celine's expression changed instantly, from sorrow to survival. "They found us." "Who?" Varen's men, she said, snatching my arm. They must have tracked Sylvia when she escaped. We ran through the back corridor, boots splashing through puddles, hearts pounding in sync. The conservatory shuddered with shouts and footsteps behind us. Celine led me to a rusted service door hidden by vines. It groaned open to reveal a narrow path leading down into the forest. Go left at the stream, she said breathlessly. There's a car under the old bridge. And you. I'll buy you time. Not a chance. I grabbed her hand. We're leaving together. She hesitated, but then nodded. Together we sprinted through the wet grass as shouts grew louder behind us. The night air bit at my lungs, and somewhere behind the chaos, a voice yelled my name. We reached the stream, half drowned by moonlight, and stumbled into the shadows under the bridge. There, half covered in reeds, sat a dusty blue hatchback with keys in the ignition. Celine collapsed into the passenger seat, trembling. I started the engine. Where to? She turned toward me, her face streaked with tears but eyes fierce. Birchwood Hall, she said. It ends tonight, one way or another. The road to Birchwood Hall stretched like a dark ribbon through the forest, slick from the evening rain. The wipers squeaked rhythmically, matching the uneven beat of my heart. Beside me, Celine kept checking the side mirror, her hand trembling slightly each time headlights appeared in the distance. She hadn't spoken much since we escaped Arden's Rest, and the silence between us buzzed with things neither of us dared to say. I finally broke it. You're sure this is where Varen will be tonight? Yes, she said softly. It's where he hosts all his private ceremonies. No media, no outsiders. Only the inner circle. I nodded. And you're supposed to walk in there like nothing happened. Her lips pressed together. Exactly. We drove through the main gates just before midnight. Birchwood Hall stood like a sleeping giant, a restored estate draped in ivy and shimmering lanterns. Classical music drifted through the open windows. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale wedding. Inside, it was a fortress built on secrets. I parked behind a row of catering vans, and Celine handed me a slim envelope. Inside was a staff badge with my name, Rowan Hale, Technical Crew. Security scans every guest, she explained, but no one checks the service staff. You'll go through the kitchen, find the control room, and plug this into the system. She showed me a tiny black flash drive. Once it uploads, Varen's ledgers will appear on the big screen during the ceremony. Public humiliation, I muttered. Fitting. Her smile was faint but real. I knew you'd understand. We slipped through the side door among the noise of busy staff. I changed into a catering uniform and wheeled a tray of glasses down the marble corridor. My heart thudded with every step. Chandeliers hung like stars above the ballroom, and hundreds of guests, politicians, investors, even a few celebrities, mingled beneath. At the far end, Varen himself stood, laughing with that same effortless charm Celine once described. I felt my hands tighten around the tray. Over the next few minutes, Celine drifted into the crowd, her posture graceful, mask-like. I waited for her subtle signal, the touch of her bracelet, to move. But something fell off. Varen's smile didn't reach his eyes. He kept glancing toward the mezzanine, where a cluster of suited men stood watching everything. When her signal finally came, I slipped away to the control room. The security guards outside barely noticed me as I entered. Rows of monitors filled the dim space, showing every angle of the ballroom. I found the main console and inserted the flash drive. The progress bar crawled, 10%, 20%, 30%. Then the screen flickered red. Connection override detected. A voice behind me said quietly, "You shouldn't have come, Rowan." I spun around. Sylvia stood in the doorway, holding a gun. For a second, I couldn't move. The woman I once trusted, the one who'd warned me, helped me, cried in my workshop, was now pointing a gun straight at my chest. Sylvia's hands shook slightly, but her voice was steady. "I told you to stay out of this," she said. "Now Varen thinks you're the leak." "Then you're working for him," I said quietly. "All this time, it's not that simple." Her voice cracked. "He has my brother. I thought if I helped him catch Celine, he'd let him go." The air thickened with betrayal. I glanced at the screen behind her, Upload 63%. Almost there. If you stop me now, all of this will stay buried. Do you really want that? Her eyes flicked toward the monitor. You think I haven't tried? Varen owns everything. Police, lawyers, the press. You can't win. Maybe not, I said, taking a slow step closer, but truth has a way of surviving. She hesitated. Rowan, stop. I didn't. I kept talking, low and steady. You said once you admired Celine's courage. What would she say if she saw you now, helping the man who destroyed both our lives? Her eyes filled with tears. Don't do this. Then help me. The upload bar hit 90%. A loud knock came from outside the control room. Everything all right in there? A guard called. Sylvia's hand trembled. For a heartbeat, she looked at me. And then, with a choked whisper, she fired. The shot cracked through the room, but the bullet buried itself in the wall beside me. Go, she gasped, throwing me the flash drive. Get out before they find you. The guards burst through the door. Sylvia turned, shouting, he went that way, as I dove through the side exit. My ears rang, my lungs burned. I sprinted down the corridor, clutching the flash drive. Then I heard it, chaos. Guests screaming, glass shattering, and over it all, Varen's furious voice echoing through the ballroom. Find her. Find them both. I burst through a service door into the garden just as fireworks exploded above the hall. Celine appeared from the shadows, barefoot, her dress torn. The feed, did it work? Almost, I panted. We need a signal. She nodded toward a decorative arch strung with fairy lights. That's the projector hub. Plug it in there. As I reached for the cable, gunfire erupted behind us. Bullets tore through the hedges. Varen's men poured out of the building. Rowan now, Celine shouted. I jammed the flash drive into the port, sparks flying. The music cut. Every screen across the estate lit up, displaying financial statements, hidden contracts, bribes, and one name repeated in dozens of documents, Derek Varen. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Varen shouted orders, but it was too late. Then Sylvia stumbled out of the building, blood on her arm, yelling, they're planting explosives. Get out. Panic rippled through the guests like wildfire. Screams filled the air as people rushed toward the exits. Varen's men scattered, trying to contain the chaos. I grabbed Celine's hand and ran through the garden, ducking low behind marble statues as the first explosion shook the hall. Fire blossomed against the night sky, illuminating everything in cruel orange. We reached the far gate, just as debris rained down. The car we'd driven sat where we left it, half hidden under branches. Celine was shaking, coughing from the smoke. The data, she asked. I got it out before the blast. It's backed up. I showed her the small duplicate drive I'd made earlier. It's safe, but she didn't look relieved. Her eyes were fixed behind me. Rowan. I turned. Varen stood by the flaming archway, gun in hand, his suit scorched, his face twisted in rage. You think you can destroy me? He bellowed. You're nothing but a fool with a hammer. He raised the gun. I tackled Celine to the ground just as a shot ripped through the air. The bullet grazed my shoulder, searing pain down my arm. I rolled, grabbed a broken branch, and swung it, knocking the gun for his hand. Celine kicked it away and stood between us. It's over, Derek, she shouted. Everything's live. The whole world's watching. He laughed bitterly, clutching his side. You think anyone will believe you? You're both dead already. Before he could lunge again, police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have alerted them. Varen froze, eyes wide, realizing it was over. He turned and fled into the burning hall. Celine rushed to me, pressing her hand against my wound. Stay still, please. You're losing blood. I managed a weak smile. You said it would end tonight. She nodded, tears streaking her face. It did, but not the way I wanted. As the sirens grew louder, we collapsed beside the car, the sky glowing red above us. I held her hand tight. You did it, Celine. The truth's out. Her fingers squeezed mine. No, Rowan. We did. The rest blurred. The shouts, the paramedics, the flicker of blue lights. My last memory before darkness took me was of Celine whispering near my ear, I'll find you when it's safe. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, everything was white. The ceiling above me looked sterile and endless, humming faintly with a rhythm of fluorescent lights. A soft beeping matched the slow, steady pulse in my wrist. For a moment, I didn't know where I was or who I was. Then pain returned, sharp and immediate, radiating from my shoulder. A nurse's voice broke through the haze. "Mr. Hale, can you hear me?" I nodded weakly. My throat felt dry. Where is she?" "Celine." The nurse hesitated. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. The police are waiting outside. They'll explain." 2 days. My mind spun. The explosion, the fire, Varen's voice, it all flooded back. I tried to sit up, but the nurse gently pushed me down. "Please." The doctor said minimal movement. The door opened. 2 men in suits entered. Their badges flashed silver under the light. "Rowan Hale," one asked. "I'm Inspector Doyle. This is Agent Marin from Financial Crimes." "Where's Celine?" I croaked again. Doyle exchanged a look with Marin. "She's missing," he said finally. "We found traces of her near the south exit, but no body. Witnesses claim she was taken by an unmarked vehicle minutes before emergency responders arrived." "Taken," I repeated, heart pounding. "By who?" Marin unfolded a file. "We believe Derek Varen's remaining associates escaped with her. Varen himself was found dead inside the hall, gunshot wound. Cause still under investigation. Dead." I didn't feel the triumph I thought I would. Only emptiness. "So, it's over." Doyle sighed. "Not quite. The data you leaked, brilliant move, by the way, exposed half the city's elite. But it also made enemies. Some of Varen's partners are already claiming the footage was fabricated. So you're saying the truth's being buried again." "Modified," Marin said flatly. "And until we verify your involvement, you're under protective observation." "Protective." It sounded like another word for caged. They asked more questions: how I got the flash drive, what I knew of Celine's role, if I'd ever received money from her. I answered honestly, but I could see the doubt flickering in their eyes. To them, I was just another piece in a scandal too large to untangle. When they finally left, I stared at the 4-tube in my arm and whispered, "Celine, where are you?" Outside, a storm began to beat against the hospital windows. Thunder rolled across the horizon, as if the world itself was restless. That night, I couldn't sleep. A nurse brought me soup I barely touched. Around midnight, I heard movement in the hallway, soft steps, the creak of the door. A folded note slipped under the gap and landed on the floor. My pulse jumped. I reached for it with my good arm. On it, written in hurried ink, "If you still trust her, leave at dawn." The truth didn't die at Birchwood. Sylvia. She was alive. I left the hospital before sunrise. The halls were quiet except for the soft shuffle of nurses on night duty. I moved carefully, wearing a hoodie over my bandaged shoulder, keeping my head low. Outside, the morning air smelled of wet asphalt and uncertainty. Sylvia's note didn't say where to go, but there was only one place she could mean. The last address she mentioned before the chaos, Arden's Rest. I caught a bus heading north, paying cash. The landscape passed like a blur. Rain-washed streets, shuttered shops, sleepy houses. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Celine's face lit by firelight, her lips mouthing "we did it." When I reached the conservatory ruins, the air was thick with humidity and silence. I walked through the same cracked glass doors where we had stood days before. The fountain was still there, the hollow stone where I found her letter still empty. "Rowan," a voice whispered. Sylvia stepped out from behind a fallen beam, wearing a torn jacket, her hair matted. She looked exhausted but alive. "You're supposed to be in custody," I said. She gave a weary smile. "So are you." We sat on a broken bench, the light filtering through ivy. She handed me a small envelope. "I didn't shoot you to stop you. I missed on purpose." "I know," I said softly. "You saved me." She nodded. "Varen's gone, but his files aren't. Someone else is trying to control them now. His second in command, Merrick Solon, has Celine." The name hit me like ice water. "What does he want?" "He thinks Celine still has access codes hidden in her bracelet. He won't kill her until he's sure he's extracted them. Then we have to find her." Sylvia hesitated. "Rowan, it's not that easy. Merrick owns half the security firms in this region. He's rebuilding the network Varen started, but underground this time. I clench my fists. Then we find where he's hiding. We end it before he does. She studied me, maybe searching for the gentle carpenter I used to be. You've changed, she said finally. So has everything, I replied. Before she could answer, we heard distant engines. Black SUVs crawling up the dirt road. Sylvia's face blanched. They traced me. I grabbed her arm. Is there another way out? She pointed toward the east wing, through the cellar tunnels. We sprinted through the overgrown hallway as the sound of boots echoed behind us. Bullets splintered glass. Vines shook as we ducked into the tunnel mouth. Dust filled the air, and the dim light from Sylvia's phone guided us through the maze of roots and brick. When we finally emerged into daylight, we were on the far side of the hill, the forest stretching ahead. Sylvia gasped for breath. There's someone who can help, Celine's contact. A man named Dr. Oren. He runs a research outpost near the coast. Then that's where we go. She nodded, wiping blood from her lip. But we'll need proof. Something to trade. What proof? She looked at me gravely. The second drive. I frowned. There's another one? Yes, she said. Celine made 2 copies. The one you used was a decoy. The real data, names, accounts, blackmail material, it's all in the second drive. And I think it's hidden somewhere in your workshop. The drive back to town felt like retracing a ghost's footsteps. Every street corner reminded me of a version of myself that didn't exist anymore. The quiet craftsman, the dreamer who believed kindness could fix anything. Now, every act of trust felt like walking barefoot through broken glass. We reached my workshop by dusk. The air smelled faintly of sawdust and rain, and for a moment, the normalcy almost broke me. Tools lay exactly as I'd left them. The half-finished crib for my neighbor's baby stood untouched in the corner. This place feels like a memory, Sylvia murmured. It was, I said quietly. Before all this, we searched every inch, drawers, walls, floorboards, but found nothing. Hours passed. Then I remembered something, Celine's phrase, follow the blue light. I looked toward the shelf where my old carving lamp sat. Its switch glowed faintly blue even when unplugged, a small trick I'd built in for design aesthetics. I unscrewed the base. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a slim silver flash drive. Sylvia exhaled. That's it. I turned it in my hand. Why hide it here? Because she trusted you, she said softly, even when she couldn't tell you why. Before I could respond, a phone buzzed in Sylvia's pocket. She frowned, answered, and froze. It's Dr. Oren, she whispered. He says he's not alone. Someone found Celine. My heart leaped. Where? Her face drained of color. She's at the outpost, but Marek's men are already there. Without thinking, I grabbed my jacket. Then we go now. Rowan, you're still injured. She risked everything for me, I said, gripping the drive. I'm not losing her again. Sylvia nodded, eyes hardening. Then let's finish this. We ran out into the night, engines roaring to life, the storm clouds gathering once more above the horizon. The sea smelled of iron and salt when we reached the coast. Sylvia's headlights cut through the fog like weak flashlights, searching an endless void. The road narrowed into a single dirt path, ending before a weather-beaten shack perched on a cliffside. That's Oren's place? I asked, doubting the coordinates Celine had once marked on her old map. Sylvia checked her notes. She said Oren vanished years ago after exposing a fun scam. Maybe that's why she trusted him. The door creaked open before we could knock. A man with silver hair and a limp stood framed in the doorway. His face was half hidden by shadow, but his voice was calm and knowing. You're late, and you brought company. I felt my stomach twist. You know who we are? He gave a faint smile. I know who she is. His gaze shifted to Sylvia, the journalist who almost brought Varen down once before. Sylvia froze. You knew about that? I helped erase your trail, Oren said simply, stepping aside to let us in. Inside, the air smelled of iodine and wood polish. Papers covered every table, tangled with wires, flash drives, and scribbled diagrams. Celine told me you'd come, Oren said, pouring 3 cups of black tea. She found something she shouldn't have, the second drive. It's not just about Varen's bribes. It's about you, Rowan. The words hit like a hammer. Me? He turned one of the monitors toward us. On the screen, I saw old government documents, blueprints signed with a familiar name, Arthur Kellen. My father. Orrin explained quietly. Your father's construction firm was one of Varen's earliest fronts. When the foundation collapsed, the papers showed him as the scapegoat, but Varen had already taken the money and vanished. That's why Celine came to you, because you were unknowingly the last loose end. Varen wanted to erase every connection. I felt the room spin. My father had died believing he'd failed, but he hadn't. He'd been framed. Sylvia placed a hand on my arm. That's why she said you'd understand soon. A storm was building outside, rain smearing the windows. Orrin handed me a sealed envelope. Celine said this was for when you were ready. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a small wooden charm, one of the pendants I'd carved for her. On the back, in tiny letters she'd etched, "Trust the storm." Before I could ask what it meant, the generator flickered. A faint buzzing filled the air. Sylvia looked at the ceiling. That's a drone. Orrin's calm expression hardened. They found us. He shoved the second drive into my hand. Get to the cliffs. There's a tunnel that leads to the dock below. I'll stall them. I refuse to move. You'll die. He smiled faintly. Better me than the last honest carpenter in Varen's ledger. Sylvia pulled me toward the back door as headlights flared outside. Men shouted. The crash of breaking glass filled the shack. I looked back once. Orrin was already disconnecting cables, feeding them into a small fire. We sprinted into the rain, the wind tearing at our clothes. The cliffs opened ahead, slick and steep, and below we saw the black water pulsing like a heartbeat. Sylvia shouted over the storm, "Rowan, the tunnel!" A shot rang out. Stones splintered near my feet. We dove into the narrow opening just as another explosion ripped through the shack behind us. The blast lit the sky, reflecting in Sylvia's terrified eyes. Down in the darkness, with the smell of salt and smoke surrounding us, I realized Orrin's last words weren't goodbye. They were a warning. If the drive really tied Varen to my father's death, then the game had just changed. And now, for the first time, I wasn't running to find Celine. I was running to finish what my father started. The tunnel ended in a narrow dock, slick with seaweed and rain. The waves crashed against the cliffs below like the heartbeat of the storm itself. Sylvia lit a lantern, its warm glow cutting through the darkness as we carefully placed the second drive on a small, overturned crate. I swallowed hard. This is it, the drive. Everything Celine risked her life for. Sylvia nodded. It better be worth it. Merrick Solon knows we have it. If he tracks us here, it's over. I connected the drive to my laptop, the screen flickering to life. Rows of spreadsheets, bank transfers, and coded correspondence filled the display. But one folder caught my eye. Kellen and Varen. I clicked it, and the files spilled open. Contracts, falsified insurance claims, blueprints of demolished buildings, and emails directly linking Varen to my father's collapse. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. My father hadn't failed. He'd been framed. Every late night, every argument with the bank, every empty look on his face, it had all been Varen's doing. I clenched my fists, teeth gritting. This proves it. He ruined my father on purpose. Sylvia placed a hand on my shoulder. We can't linger. Merrick could be tracking the drive through satellite signals. I nodded, scrolling down further. Among the financial files was a folder labeled Celine Ops. Opening it revealed something I hadn't expected. Photos of Celine in disguises, meeting strangers, gathering intel on Varen's network. Then I saw a file dated today. Images of a warehouse by the harbor. Celine was inside, surrounded by armed men. My stomach twisted. She's trapped. Sylvia frowned. Then we move. Now. We left the dock silently, sticking to the shadows. The storm lashed at us as we crept toward the harbor, the smell of salt and gasoline thick in the air. Containers loomed like dark monoliths, their corners hiding men we couldn't see until it was too late. From the edge of the pier, we spotted Celine, bound to a pillar, her dress torn, a single guard pacing beside her. Merrick Solon's smug grin was unmistakable. He held a tablet in one hand, monitoring security feeds, while two other men with rifles flanked the entrance. I tightened my jaw. How do we get her out without alerting all of them? Sylvia handed me a small, cylindrical object. Smoke canister. Toss it, create a diversion, then grab the drive and grab her. I nodded. We counted silently. 3 to 1. I hurled the canister. Thick, white smoke engulfed the pier, choking the air. Coughing, Marek's men shouted orders, waving their arms blindly. I sprinted forward, my wet shoes slipping against the wooden planks. Sylvia pulled a crowbar from her coat and knocked the guard off balance. Celine's eyes widened as we reached her. Rowan, no time, I hissed. I sliced the ropes around her wrists with a pocket knife, her hands trembling as she rubbed at the cuts. Marek's voice roared from somewhere deeper in the smoke. Stop them! We ran together toward a container stacked at the edge of the pier. I could hear footsteps and shouts closing in, bullets splintering what around us. Sylvia jammed the container door open just wide enough for us to slip inside. The metallic echo of boots on planks followed us, the rain pounding like drums on the roof. Celine collapsed against my shoulder, gasping. I thought I was done for. You're not, I said firmly. Not while I'm here. Inside the container, the laptop sat waiting. I quickly inserted the drive and initiated a data transfer. Every second felt like a lifetime. Outside, Marek's men tried to pry open the container, banging their rifles against the metal walls. Then the lights flickered. I realized we weren't just transferring files. We were triggering an automatic broadcast. Screens across the city, through media channels and social networks, were about to display Varen's and Marek's entire corrupt empire. Celine's eyes widened. You did it. Together, I said, squeezing her hand. The container door shuddered violently. Marek's gritted voice cut through the chaos. I warned you. Sylvia planted her foot against the door, holding it. It's over, Marek. The truth's out now. The final seconds ticked down. The transfer completed, and we watched the progress bar turn green. Then, in the distance, a siren wailed, a mix of police, private security, and reporters converging on the harbor. Marek realized his empire was crumbling before his eyes. The container shook one last time before the sirens, and approaching footsteps drowned out the panic. I looked at Celine, rain dripping from her hair, her eyes locked on mine. Relief washed over me, sharp and overwhelming. This isn't just about us anymore, she whispered. It's about everyone who's been silenced. I nodded. Then we make sure they're heard. The container shuddered under the weight of Marek's fury. Shouts, pounding feet, and the splintering of it echoed like a storm inside the metal walls. Celine clung to me, her teeth chattering from both cold and fear, as Sylvia braced the door with all her strength. Outside, I could see shadows moving, Marek and his men desperate to stop the broadcast we had just triggered. We need a plan now. Sylvia hissed, sweat and rain streaking her face. I took a deep breath, tried to focus through the chaos. The second drive had already started its citywide leak. Every corrupt transaction, every bribe, every falsified document was streaming to law enforcement, media outlets, and watchdog organizations. Marek didn't know this yet, but the moment he realized, his empire would crumble faster than he could react. I've got an idea, I said, gripping the drive tightly. We distract them long enough to escape, then let the authorities finish what we started. Celine's eyes widened. How? They have guns. Sylvia gave me a sharp glance. By making them think we're trapped. I scanned the container. 2 small crates, an old lantern, and a coil of rope were all we had. Then I spotted it, a loose vent near the ceiling. If I could wedge the crates underneath and knock the lantern over, it might create enough smoke and chaos for a getaway. I motioned to Sylvia and Celine. On my mark. When the smoke rises, we climb. Marek's voice cut through the night, angry and brittle. I'll tear this dock apart if I have to. I nodded. Now. Sylvia shoved the crates. I tipped the lantern, and the container filled with thick, acrid smoke. Marek's men screamed and cursed outside, coughing and waving their rifles blindly. I grabbed Celine's hand, pulled her to the vent, and hoisted her up. Sylvia followed, grunting against the weight. The world outside was chaos. flashes of fire from overturned lanterns, the shadows of armed men thrashing in confusion, and the wail of sirens growing louder with every second. I climbed after Celine, the rope cutting into my palms, every moment feeling like a lifetime. At the edge of the dock, we slid down into the water, waves slamming against us. The cold stole our breath, but we kept moving, swimming toward the shadows of fishing boats moored nearby. Marek's shouts were muffled by the storm, but I could hear the rage in his voice. He knew the broadcast had already begun. We reached the boats, climbing aboard silently. Celine's wet hair clung to her face. "Did we?" she started. "Yes," I said, shivering. "The world knows." She leaned against me, exhausted but alive. For the first time in days, relief began to replace the terror. "Rowan, you risked everything for me. For us." I shook my head. "No, you risked everything for everyone." I just followed. Sylvia climbed aboard, her jacket soaked through. "We're not safe yet. Marek's men won't give up easily. But we have leverage. The data is out there, public, unalterable." The wind picked up, waves slamming against the hull of the boat, and the first hints of dawn crept across the horizon. Marek's empire was burning, and yet the weight of everything we'd endured pressed down on us. I glanced at Celine, her face pale but resolute, and felt a surge of gratitude. She had trusted me, and somehow I had managed to protect her. Then my phone buzzed. Sylvia answered cautiously, holding it up. "It's Oren. He says the authorities are moving in to secure Celine and the drive." Celine's lips trembled. They're safe." "Yes," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. The storm was not over, but the first wave had passed. Hours later, when we finally reached the safe house Oren had prepared, I sat with Celine and Sylvia, shivering from exhaustion and adrenaline. Celine looked at me, eyes glistening. "Rowan, all of this, it's because of you. Your kindness, your trust. Without it, I couldn't have done what I had to do." I shook my head, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It's because of you. You believed in exposing the truth. I just got to follow you." She leaned into me. "Still, you risked everything. And yet, you never faltered." I laughed softly, the sound hollow but genuine. "I only faltered once, when I thought I might lose you." Silence fell between us, heavy but comforting. Outside, the city slowly woke, unaware that the truth about Varen, Marek, and my father had begun to ripple through its veins. I realized then that this wasn't just our victory. It was the culmination of every small act of honesty, courage, and kindness that had guided me through life. The reason I could still trust someone fully, even after betrayal and danger. Celine squeezed my hand. "So what now?" I smiled, looking at the two people who had risked everything alongside me. "Now we make sure the truth stays alive. And we heal." The storm passed, leaving the first golden light of dawn over the harbor. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt hope, not just for us, but for all the people whose lives Varen and his allies had touched. And I knew, deep down, that the journey was far from over, but together we could face whatever came next. The safe house smelled faintly of cedar and antiseptic, a fragile comfort after the chaos of the docks. I sat at the small wooden table, staring at the second drive, my fingers brushing the smooth metal casing. Every file on it felt like a heartbeat, proof of Varen's crimes, evidence of my father's innocence, and the key to Celine's mission. Sylvia poured us each a cup of weak tea, her eyes constantly flicking toward the window. "Authorities have secured the outpost. Marek won't get in there again," she said quietly. "But there's someone else, someone you haven't accounted for." I frowned. "Who?" "Varen had partners in the city," she said, hesitating. "They're not all dead. One of them is," she swallowed, "your father's old partner. His name is Lionel Dane. He's powerful, and he's angry. He knows about the second drive." The words hit me like a hammer. My father's old friend, someone I had trusted through childhood stories, who had taught me carpentry and patience, could be an enemy now. I clenched the drive. "Then we have to stop him from erasing everything." Celine, sitting across from me, nodded. Her hand rested lightly on mine. We'll do it together. We already survived Merrick. We can handle Dane. Hours later, we traced Dane's operations through the data on the drive. Offices, shell corporations, offshore accounts, all feeding into the remnants of Varen's network. He had been quietly consolidating power, cleaning up any loose ends that could implicate him. Tomorrow night, Celine whispered, he holds a private gala. It's the perfect place to confront him. I looked at her, worried. Are you sure? She smiled faintly, tired but resolute. I'm sure. It's time the truth comes out completely. And Rowan, this time, I need you to trust me. I nodded. Trust. After weeks of deception, near death, and betrayal, the word felt heavier than ever. But I also knew it had carried me through every dark moment. And I trusted Celine more than anyone. The gala was held at an old restored estate, grander than anything I'd seen in my life. Chandeliers glimmered, classical music floated, and the city's elite mingled in flawless suits and gowns. Every detail screamed control, wealth, and calculated elegance. Celine and I slipped in quietly, disguised as catering staff. The second drive was hidden in my coat pocket, our ticket to exposing Lionel Dane once and for all. Sylvia trailed slightly behind, alert to any sign of Dane's security. We found Dane at the far end of the ballroom, laughing with a cluster of politicians and financiers. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and when he saw us, they narrowed. Not with recognition, but suspicion. Rowan Hale, Celine whispered, stay calm. We moved closer, keeping to the shadows. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. Every small act of kindness, every decision to trust and follow, had led us here. The culmination of weeks of fear, hope, and relentless pursuit. Sylvia nudged me. The moment is now. We approached the central monitor system disguised as part of the AV setup. I inserted the second drive, watching as the screen flickered to life. The file streamed directly to the estate's media channels, financials, emails, secret accounts, proof of collusion, and incriminating correspondence tying Dane to Varen's entire empire. Dane's face went pale. His laughter vanished. Impossible, he shouted. Guests murmured. Phones lifted, cameras turned. Social media feeds began buzzing live. The room erupted in panic. Celine stepped forward, finally unmasked, her voice steady. It's over, Lionel. Every lie, every cover-up, every life you ruined, you can't hide anymore. Dane lunged, desperate, but security intervened almost instantly. Guests murmured, whispers of shock and awe spreading through the hall. And in that moment, I realized the full weight of what we'd done. It wasn't just about us. It was about truth, justice, and honoring those who had suffered silently. After Dane was restrained, we left the gala quietly, the city lights flickering around us like stars. I held Celine's hand, exhausted and yet full of relief. Sylvia caught up. You two did it. You exposed everything. Merrick, Varen, Dane gone. The city will never forget this. Celine smiled faintly, leaning against me. Rowan, I couldn't have done any of this without you. Your trust, your kindness, it was the key. I shook my head, overwhelmed. You risked everything. You risked your life for me, for the truth. No, she said softly. We risked everything because it was the right thing to do. And you reminded me what that looks like. Honesty, courage, and kindness even when it seems impossible. We walked along the empty streets, damp from the storm that had passed hours earlier. The glow of the city reflected in puddles, and for the first time, the world seemed alive with possibility rather than danger. I realized then the true reward wasn't the exposure of criminals or the vindication of my father. It was the clarity that comes when trust and goodness triumph against darkness. I squeezed Celine's hand. Let's go home. We've earned this. Sylvia nodded, smiling faintly. And let's make sure the second drive stays safe. It's more than proof. It's hope for everyone Varen and Dane tried to destroy. As we walked into the early morning light, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Weeks of danger, deception, and heartbreak had forged something unbreakable. A bond of trust, a commitment to truth, and a knowledge that kindness, no matter how humble, could change the world. The storm was over. The truth had survived. And so had we. The safe house smelled faintly of cedar and rain as we returned, carrying the weight of what we had done and what was still to come. Even with Varen, Merrick, and Dana out of the way, I knew the city's recovery was far from complete. Their networks had roots everywhere. Silence could still choke the truth if we weren't careful. Celine collapsed onto a chair, exhausted. "Rowan, I can't believe we made it through." I sat beside her, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. We did, because we trusted each other, and because we never stopped. Sylvia placed a hand on the table, hesitating. "There's someone you need to meet," she said. "It's time the person who orchestrated all of this finally shows themselves." I frowned. "Who?" A shadow moved in the corner. A man stepped forward, not tall, not imposing, but calm and deliberate. His clothes were modest, and his hands were calloused. My first instinct was disbelief. "This man?" "I am Oren," he said, bowing slightly, "and you have succeeded where most would have failed." I stared. "You orchestrated everything? The safe house, the second drive, even the trap for Varen and his associates?" He nodded. "Yes. I guided Celine, monitored Merrick, and ensured the data reached you. You see, Rowan, your life of integrity, your acts of kindness, your honesty, your patience were the final keys to this operation. I could have used anyone, but you," he smiled faintly. "You inspired trust. And without trust, the mission would have failed." Celine looked at me, tears forming. "Rowan, I never told you everything because I didn't want you to doubt yourself. But you were the reason I could follow through." I shook my head, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say." Oren waved his hand. "You don't need to say anything. Just know that your compassion, your simple goodness, has changed lives beyond your imagination." And now, he gestured to the side, and a small box was placed in my hands. Inside was the key to a workshop, a large, fully equipped carpentry studio funded by a philanthropist who had been observing Varen's downfall. Tools gleamed, wood polished and stacked neatly, the scent of fresh pine strong in the air. I realized, for the first time, the scale of the reward, a place where I could teach, build, and spread the same kindness that had guided me through every trial. The next morning, I stepped into the workshop, sunlight spilling across the polished floorboards. I ran my hands over the workbench, remembering each late night I had spent crafting toys, repairing doors, and sharing small kindnesses with neighbors. Each act, humble as it seemed, had led to this, a tangible place to multiply goodness. Celine followed, holding the flash drive. "It's beautiful," she whispered, eyes glistening. "I can't believe it's yours." I smiled faintly. "It's not just mine. It's for everyone who believes kindness can make a difference." Outside, Sylvia organized files and correspondence from the second drive. "We should use these to continue exposing corruption," she said. "There's still so much work left to do." I looked at Celine. "Together?" She nodded. "Together." That afternoon, Oren arrived with a modest group of journalists and local leaders. The meeting felt surreal. People who had once been victims of Varen, Merrick, and Dane's schemes, now standing in a circle of trust and possibility. Oren introduced each one, quietly emphasizing the importance of honesty, courage, and perseverance. At one point, I caught sight of my father's old photograph on the wall, a reminder that every choice I had made, every act of small kindness had been noticed and remembered. My heart swelled. The reward was bigger than wealth or recognition. It was the knowledge that right now, my father's legacy was restored. Celine squeezed my hand. "Rowan, this is what I meant when I said trust the storm. You stayed steady, even when everything seemed impossible." I swallowed hard. "And you never stopped, even when I didn't know the truth." We shared a quiet smile, the kind of smile that comes after weeks of fear, danger, and uncertainty. This was more than victory. It was transformation. Weeks later, the workshop had become a beacon for the neighborhood. Children ran through the aisles of wood and tools, laughing as they painted and carved. Neighbors brought in broken furniture and battered toys, trusting that their small treasures would be restored by hands guided by honesty and care. I watched from a corner, Celine beside me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. Sylvia busied herself distributing old financial files from the drive to journalists who promised to continue exposing corruption, ensuring no one like Varen or Merrick could rise again. One afternoon, Oren returned quietly, leaning against the doorway. "It's time to leave," he said softly. "Your work here is just beginning, but it no longer requires my guidance." I nodded, a lump in my throat. "Thank you. For everything. For trusting me." He smiled faintly. "I didn't trust you. I knew you could handle it. And that's the truth you will carry forward. Always." As he walked away, the late afternoon sun caught the dust in the air, creating a warm, golden glow. It felt symbolic, an acknowledgement that even after the darkest storms, light always returned. Celine looked at me. "Rowan, we did it." "Yes," I said, "and we'll keep doing it." I realized that everything we had endured, fear, betrayal, near death, was not wasted. Every act of trust, every quiet choice to do the right thing had led to this moment. Our lives were not just ours anymore. They were a promise, a lesson, a testament to the power of goodness and courage. I held Celine's hand, looking out over the small crowd of children, neighbors, and friends. In that moment, I understood the true reward. Kindness is never wasted, honesty is never meaningless, and even the smallest act can change the course of history. The storm had passed. The light was ours. My name is Rowan Kellen. I am 31 years old, and I am a carpenter. That's how it began, and strangely, that's also how it ends. But somewhere between the sawdust and the storms, I learned that life is not about what you build with your hands, but what you mend with your heart. It's been 6 months since Varen's empire collapsed. His assets were seized, his accomplices scattered, and his name, once powerful enough to silence truth, now exists only in headlines that speak of justice and exposure. The people he wronged have begun to heal. The city feels lighter, quieter, as if it's exhaling after years of holding its breath. As for me, my days are simple again. The workshop Oren helped establish has become my world, a place filled with the smell of pine, laughter, and purpose. Each morning, I open the doors and let the light flood in. Children come to carve toys. Teenagers learn to shape wood. Old men repair heirlooms that once seemed too broken to save. It's funny. In the beginning, I believed kindness was something small, almost naive. A way to survive quietly in a world too loud with cruelty. But now I understand it's a revolution, one gentle act at a time. Celine visits often, though she still works with Sylvia and a small group of whistleblowers who continue to uncover what Varen's network hid. She says she feels lighter too, no longer defined by her past. "I used to wear guilt like armor," she told me once as we closed up the workshop for the night. "But you taught me that forgiveness is not weakness. It's rebuilding, one nail, one board at a time." When she said that, I remembered the pendant she left behind, the one I carved for her. It still hangs in the corner of the workshop, above the first bench. On its back are the words she etched herself. "Trust the storm." I didn't understand those words until now. Trusting the storm isn't about liking the chaos. It's about believing that the rain, no matter how fierce, can reveal something pure underneath. The storm that tore my world apart also washed away everything false, leaving only what mattered: truth, love, and quiet strength. Sylvia stops by sometimes, bringing old newspapers or fresh leads for the story she writes. She always jokes that she's the narrator of our legend, but her eyes still carry the weight of all she's seen. She says she envies how I can move on, how I can build again after everything. I tell her the same thing every time. You don't move on by forgetting. You move on by shaping what's left. Last week, a small boy came into the shop carrying a broken wooden toy, one of mine from years ago. He looked up at me with wide eyes and said, "My dad said you can fix anything." I took the toy from him carefully, the way I had once taken my father's broken name and tried to repair it. "Maybe not anything," I said, smiling, "but we can try." As I worked, the boy watched in silence, fascinated by each movement of the blade, the sandpaper, the polish. When I handed it back, good as new, he whispered, you're a magician." I laughed softly. "No, son, just a carpenter." But deep down, I knew what he meant. Because somewhere between betrayal and forgiveness, between loss and hope, something magical had indeed happened. Not in the world around me, but in the way I saw it. At sunset, when the workshop empties and the light fades to gold, I often sit by the window with Celine. The world outside hums with the quiet rhythm of people rebuilding their lives. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. Silence, for us, is not distance, it's peace. I think of my father often now, not as the man crushed by injustice, but as the one whose integrity outlived the lie. I imagine him walking through the workshop, seeing the children smile, the shavings curl from wood, the smell of cedar and varnish blending with laughter. And I know he'd be proud. In the end, I didn't just find Celine again, I found myself. And in doing so, I found the truth my father tried to teach me long ago. Kindness is not weakness. It's endurance. It's faith. It's the quiet revolution that survives every storm. So if anyone asks who I am now, I tell them the same thing I told you at the start. I am Rowan Kellen. I am 31 years old, and I'm a carpenter. But this time, the world knows that's more than enough. Thanks for listening.